Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another special video series that we do here on Chasing Labels, where we interview certain people from behind the scenes of a lot of the boutique label companies that we talk about, or people who are just involved in the industry in general. And we've been doing this, right along over the last 5 years or so, from the very beginning of Chasing Labels. It's just a nice look behind the scenes of various people who work on these various releases that we have in our collections or that we talk about here on Chasing Labels. And the person I have here is someone who actually has been on Chasing Labels a few times in the past. I think it's 4 times. I don't know. I should have gone back and done some research on it. But the last time we saw him was our 100th episode extravaganza from a couple of years ago. And it is my good friend, Scott Saslow. And he will be here talking about the various releases that he's been working on and what he has been working on recently. So, without further ado, let me bring in Scott. And there he is. Hello, Scott. Welcome back.
Hey, what's up? Cool to be back. And yeah, I forget if this is my third or fourth time, not counting the 100th
Okay.
episode celebrity cameo, I guess.
A special guest cameo. It's
Yeah.
like a night. What was it like Night of the Stars that they used to have back in the day, where they would bring out all the stars and
Well, it's
they would
like, oh
just
my God,
talk.
Dean Martin.
Yeah, Jimmy Stewart. What are you doing here? Nice, but welcome back. Glad to have you. And I've been kind of hyping you up a little bit over the last several months because you were involved in making like my favorite release or one of my favorite releases of 2025. So I said at the time, let me contact Scott. Let me see if he'll be interested in coming on. Obviously, with scheduling and all that kind of stuff. Here you are. Finally, the months do go by quite fast.
Yeah.
So, for people who don't know who Scott is, Scott, who are you and what do you do?
I'm a freelance graphic designer. I've been at it for, God, probably 10 years now. Went back to school at 30 for graphic design. And other than one job right out of school and that I quit and one paid internship, I've pretty much been freelancing the whole time. But, I got in with Arrow uh, around 2017 or so. And that, the cliche is true, work leads to more work. So I work on a semi-regular basis with Arrow. I work a lot with Fun City Editions, a few other labels here and there, and occasional, key art jobs too. But I enjoy working in the physical media space. And yeah, it's been busy. Can't complain. If I have one day with no work emails, I start to panic, and they just come in the next day instead. But yeah, I got to work on some really cool stuff over the last year.
Yeah, for those of you who are longtime listeners, longtime, I guess, watchers, but I think we Scott goes back all the way to the early days of Chasing Labels, all the way back to the audio only days, I guess you could call them. And there is a running list we have on our Facebook page of like all of the different guests we have, and I always have to go back to look at it just to get the specific like episode dates. And yes, Scott, your first episode you were on was episode number 13 of
Wow.
Chasing Labels, going way back to several years ago. Because recently, I guess within the last week or two, has been like the official 5 year anniversary of Chasing Labels, which always creeps up on me every single year. The 1 years keep going by, but yeah, Scott, you go all the way back to one of our first guests. And if you want to go back and listen to that episode, it should be available here on the YouTube channel because I think all the audio for all the podcasts have been uploaded to here. If not, it's probably on Apple Podcasts and stuff like that. But that you'll get basically the life story of Scott Saslow up until that time, and the education, the life, the day in the life, all that
Wow.
stuff. We went pretty in depth back then, just about like the different uh, you know jobs and journeys you had throughout your life, like you were just saying, getting into graphic design now, but doing other things earlier on. And everybody finds their calling at any time in life. It really doesn't matter when you get to it, as long as you do. But yeah, so you primarily, I know that you work on a lot of graphic design when it comes to um, booklet layouts and layouts of covers and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And I know you've done some cover art designs and stuff as well.
I have not tons. I'm very minimalist. I'm not an illustrator.
Mm.
The first thing I did for Arrow was the first film noir set, which, I look at it now, yeah, I could do better now 10 years later, but they wanted it in the style of Saul Bass. And it's like,
Hmm.
oh, we've never worked together, and you now want me to,
Be Saul Bass.
imitate the style of one of the greatest designers ever. But then they kept bringing me back, and 5 years later, I got to do volumes 2 and 3. Um,
Nice. Yes. Yeah, I do remember
yeah.
those sets. Um, but I guess for our intents and purposes, I did want to get into a few of your recent highlights.
Mhm.
And I don't know sure where you particularly wanted to start. I know certainly where I would start. It would be the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle trilogy set. That's the one I want to start with. But I don't know if you want to go there right away
Yeah,
because I
let's
may get
do
a
it.
little too excited.
Let's do it. I just want to
Let's
pull it up
do it. Might as well.
on my
This has
end.
been months in the making. I've been wanting to talk about this set. I've talked about it briefly and about my excitement when it was announced, and of course, talking about Scott that you worked on this here. But I do want to hand it over to you. To what did you specifically work on when it comes to this beauty?
So actually that box art that you're holding right now, they
Hmm.
wanted. Oh no, not the slip, not the
Ah,
O card. Yeah, they wanted a turtle shell texture, so I did that. But also, so there are two versions: one with artwork by Flory, and the other with art by Matt Frank and Roberto Rivera Padro.
hmm.
And I kind of more or less took care of the rest. Did the trading cards,
Oh
uh,
yes.
which some people online were saying one of the turtles was incorrect, which I would not have knowingly done. And then I swear, but if it's incorrect, it's because it was incorrect on the original Topps cards from
From back
1990.
then, which I
Uh,
have. I still have some of those. Uh, yeah, people don't realize how massive like cross franchises the Turtles were back then. They
mhm.
put them in everything, everything.
I mean,
But yeah,
I
some of these
watched the
cards.
cartoon. I remember seeing the movie. I think I would have been in second grade. I went with a friend and parents to the theater. The stickers, um, the cleanest images of the turtles I actually had to work with were from the third film, which is why those are the turtles from the
That's why they
third
look
film.
like the third ones. Okay,
Yeah.
that makes a lot of
Um,
sense.
I was surprised. Yeah, I didn't have as much imagery as I thought I would have, given the popularity of the films, but they were really independent movies.
Yeah,
So
I don't think people
yeah,
realize this, but this is kind of considered one of the most successful box office wise independent movies of all time. Because back in the day, New Line was the ones who had the rights to it, who produced and put it out in theaters. And New Line at that time was an independent movie company. It wouldn't be until like I think the early 2000s that Warner Brothers would acquire New Line, and now New Line is part of Warner Brothers and all of that stuff. Um, and that, hence why that this is definitely part of whatever distribution deal that Arrow has going on with Warner Brothers
yep, yep.
right now.
And there'll be plenty more where that came from,
And
I
there
can.
has been plenty more. We talked in the most recent episode of Chasing Labels, episode number 187. We talked about a recent Arrow slate, the one for June of 2026, and a lot of those titles in there were Warner Brothers titles previously. So it's moving right along, as they say. But yeah, this set here has. I think each of the movies have like these little trading cards, and I know Scott. I think you worked on. Was this your design too, or
It
no?
is the Roy's logo comes from an existing piece of merch that I found and sort of retraced. The rest, this is one of the few Arrow titles where they brought me on early just to
Mm,
pitch ideas. And, I read what they had, they read what I had, but, I said, we have to do something pizza
right.
related, which is where, I think the menu cover and then the loyalty card came from. We actually, it was dropped, unfortunately. I did design an April O'Neil press badge,
Oh, that would have been cool.
reversible with both actresses. But that was dropped. But the booklet, the design itself, pretty straightforward. The cover, I think I set the prices a little too high for 1990, but it's New York City. Yeah, the trading cards, but just keeping track because it's dual format, dual region, and two
Mm,
artists, so everything is multiplied. So
right.
it's that's one where that's a good half a day just doing the packaging shots and keeping track of everything. And everything has to be, everything is labeled a certain way, O card 3D. Blu-ray UK,
Jeez.
and then UK Flory, UK Matt and Frank,
So,
multiplied by that by yep.
yeah, it's in the, for those of you who have the set, it is in the second movie, which makes sense. For those of you who have seen the movie, it opens literally at a pizza shop, and you can see people just eating. There's just like insert shots of people eating the biggest
Yep.
slices of pizza you've ever seen in your life.
And I think I got it correctly at the time, when I was designing it, because I hadn't seen the movie in years, but
Mm,
I'm about 99.9% certain that the address on the booklet is the same address of the location where they filmed it. The phone number is obviously, fake
yeah,
555.
yeah. It would be pretty awkward if you put a real phone number on there and people started calling it. That's why they had to put 555 on in movies, because people kept
Well,
calling up people, and
I
it would
did
go to
want to
actual
do
people's
that.
phones.
I did want to do that when I did the video store loyalty card for Enter the Video Store. That box set, I actually suggested, hey, can we do a real phone number with because you could do that through Google.
Hmm.
Can we get a real phone number and like I'll record a message and no.
I feel like the legal liability there would be too high.
But I'm always ready to pitch something crazy like that. But yeah, the rest, yeah, all pretty straightforward. The original art took a lot of cleanup work, especially having to size it to both the sleeves and the posters. So, a few nips and tucks here and there. The different title treatments. Is it a stack title treatment? Is it one line? Is it two lines? Everything in this box, there are multiple, there are variations, different title
Yes,
treatments, artwork in different sizes, different art altogether. And then just keeping track of the differences between the regions, because the formatting is slightly different and the logos. And
that
yeah, it
is
was
interesting. So much
yeah,
seems to go into that, which I don't think a lot of people realize all of those things, because I don't think people I think when it comes to region encoding, they just assume like, oh, the discs are different, as
mhm,
opposed to having to add different logos and where the logos go. Therefore, the art has to be readjusted on them and whatnot. Also, in the UK, they put a lot of ratings logos on
mhm,
their packages versus here, where we don't typically have that, unless on the back it's usually the MPAA rating, yeah, PG-13
yep.
or PG or whatever the case may be. Um, so that's a little bit interesting, and having to format all of that and make it look right must be quite a task.
And
Um,
I will every now and then I will notice a mistake, or I think on if it's UK because there's more going on the bottom. Sometimes I have to change the font size, but making sure that's consistent throughout. And I mean, I'm talking about fractions.
yeah.
7.5 points instead of 7.75, like that level of detail.
Now, this is completely nerdy, I guess, mathematical stuff, which I'm not a mathematician at all. Um, do you have to adjust the measurements on things because you know how overseas they use the metric and here we use standard, or
No,
is no, or
no.
nothing like that?
Well, in
Like, just in case you're
InDesign,
like sending
yeah,
artwork overseas and they only know metric, do you have to convert it for them?
no, not at all. But if there's any conversion to be done, it's on my end. And in InDesign, you can use pretty much any unit of measurement
Gotcha.
that there is. My only thing is, making sure it's in proportion. So I don't do this with every release, but making sure that for instance, if the special features text is one size and then the special edition content header is one size, and I have to shrink one down, I use a proportion calculator to make sure it's shrunk down in relation.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
the
everything's
header
gotta
text
yeah, I
isn't,
would say, yeah, if you
yeah,
move one thing, the rest have to be, I'm assuming, readjusted.
yeah.
And it really all depends on the release about, how much is listed and how much you have to, I guess, squeeze the font in there. Because like, obviously, the first Turtles movie, I think, has the most features on it, then it gets
Mhm.
less and less, so you have more space, I'm assuming, to work with over time. Um, as I
And
bump the microphone.
I just finished a release for Arrow today where I had plenty of, for once I had plenty of room, so it wasn't an issue, just a matter of making sure everything is evenly spaced, but I didn't have to worry about running out of room for the text. And there have been those releases where, okay, it's going to be small. Um,
Yeah.
you know what? If I can suggest a change in the wording, and I have, then I will. If we
Oh,
can
didn't think
if
of
certain
that.
things can be reworded or shortened, even if it just saves 3 words, sometimes that can make a difference. Yeah, we're really nerdy now.
Yeah, I was just saying that I didn't even think of changing like descriptive words to make them shorter, or even in like the blurb up top here, make that smaller by condensing, like using like one line per description of the movie or
Yeah.
whatever the case may be, or one sentence. Um, what is interesting about those things, it's like typically, I guess I can't really speak for every collector. If you're buying something like this, chances are you're a fan of this. This was like a fan's dream, if you will. And now, Scott, I don't know what your history is with the Turtles, but this is like my childhood in a box, pretty much.
I watched the cartoon like
Yeah,
every
same
kid
here.
in the late 80s, early 90s. Saw them first two films in the theater. I remember the first movie saw with a classmate and like her mom or something. I would have been 8 years old, 7 or 8. Um, and saw the second film with family. And I remember we actually got there a few minutes late.
Ah,
Uh, there was a line at the concession stand. Um, Third film did not see in the theater, but my brother, who's 3 years younger than me, he had more of the action figures and the
I still have mine
yeah.
in a box somewhere. Um, the original ones from the 90s. You kind of had to be there at the time because the Turtles were like a worldwide phenomenon of of a franchise. The, this
But we did,
movie,
yeah.
yeah, the cartoon was a massive hit. Um, the comic book was a massive hit when it came out. The comic book came out in 1984, and this movie came out in 1990. And I think the animated series was 1987. I want to say it was around that
Oh,
time.
I'd have to check. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I would have to check too. But it was all this was like coming together at the same time. Plus, there were video games and all kinds of other stuff that were going on with it. I know I still have my Nintendo games for the Turtles that I had when I was a little kid. And it's kind of interesting how all of that stuff has kind of still stay around because there are still Turtle stuff to this day. But this was such a nostalgic trip for me. That first movie, I watched it on VHS, and then I saw the second one on VHS, and I think it was the third movie I saw in the theater like 3 times. Keep in mind, it was 1993. I was 6 years old. A 6-year-old, this was like everything to me. But quickly, just a little, I guess, brief history on home video for these movies. They've been released in kind of every format. They were on VHS, like I said. They were on Laserdisc. They were on DVD. They were on Blu-ray. I think the Blu-rays came out in 2009 for the 25th anniversary of the comic book coming out in '84, like I said. And then those Blu-rays have been repackaged and repackaged
Mhm.
so many times over the years. And I was waiting and waiting and hoping that they would desperately needed kind of a remaster and an upgrade, and it finally happened. Um, with this said here, and the movies, they are from their time. 1990 was a while ago. 1990 was a while ago, but I don't think they've ever looked this good or this detailed um, in all the times I've seen it, regardless of format. And I know yeah, so much was put into this, and like I said, the bulk of the special features on this set here are for the first movie, and a lot of new stuff too. People talking about the making of that movie because that movie was a kind of a monumental thing. They got Jim Henson's Creature Shop to work on it. They were using all kinds of animatronics at the time that were relatively new. They were trying to pull off, and yeah, it's to me, it's still my favorite of all the Turtles things, in my opinion. Um, but yeah, I'm just gushing over the set for so long. I'm glad it finally came out. Glad it finally happened. Glad I know someone who worked on it. I've been using that to impress people for months.
I just remember, getting an email and the subject line just said "Cowabunga."
Nice.
But I believe there isn't there a fan funded documentary that's in the works.
Uh,
I don't know if it's about all the films or just the first one, and they're trying to get even more material, or they may have already even beyond what's
what's on
in the
here?
set. Yeah, and the making of, even though I got into how movies were made when I was a kid, I never really, uh, I never, at that point I'd sort of grown. I don't want to say outgrown Ninja Turtles because can you outgrow Ninja Turtles?
I know.
But I never really researched, and looked into the making of these movies really until recently. I mean, even when I was a kid, there was a Making of Home Alone 2 book I bought at the school book fair. You know, I knew more about how that movie was made than these movies at the time.
Yeah, I had always seen, like, people in the big old rubber suits and
Hmm.
all that kind of stuff, and yeah, they are big old rubber suits and all that kind of stuff, and it does look obvious to the modern, movie watcher. I mean, they can't avoid that, but I think it's rather impressive what they tried to pull off at the
Oh
time,
yeah.
using puppetry as well as practical effects of people in suits, using stunt people in suits.
Hmm.
Those suits were hot and uncomfortable, um, and they were in them for hours and hours. There's a lot of interesting behind the scenes making of specifically for the first movie, and a lot of rather interesting insights into it. Like I said, it's worth picking up just for all of that.
Hmm.
Because, like I said, the previous DVD and Blu-ray sets really didn't have a lot in the way of special features. They had some interactive stuff on there, but nothing in the way that's on here in terms of,
This is
very
this is
meaty special
also
features.
sorry. Oh, this is
No,
also one of those franchises where I'm surprised it took this long to get any kind of deluxe. Uh,
yeah,
you know,
same
they
here.
didn't get any. You know, it's like there was no Ninja Turtles Laserdisc box set with all the bells and whistles
Mm.
until now to get that.
Yeah, I even like their 25th anniversary box set on Blu-ray, which I do have. It was a nice little. It's in like a cardboard pizza
Mhm.
box. All the disc art are all different pizzas. Those are nice. It came with like I think it came with like a beanie, like a beanie that had Ninja Turtles logo on it and stuff like that. It did also come with the animated movie. Also, I think Turtles, specifically the animated stuff, changed rights over the last like 20 years or so. I think that because I know Nickelodeon, no, yeah, Nickelodeon now owns it, or Paramount rather owns it now, because Paramount's
Mhm.
the one putting out, those live action Michael Bay produced movies from a few years ago. Those were from Paramount. The animated stuff that was coming out now, I think, is also from them? Yeah, I think it's also from them. And so it's changed hands over the years in terms of who owns what, when, where, and how. That's always a fun little rabbit hole to
Yeah.
go down. Who owns what? But yeah, maybe that was an issue. But like you said, it took so long. It took till 2025. It took until the you know what? It was 35. Yeah, 35 years after
Mhm.
1990. That's what it was. 35th anniversary for us to get a really good deluxe edition of this. But yeah, this was something near and dear to my heart. Like I said, probably my favorite release of last year. But well, obviously, we're not going to stop there because there are some other things you want to talk about. Any other release that you want to talk about?
Yeah, let's bring up Fabulous Stains.
Oh, yes.
Now, I do
Fun.
have to say, I did not enjoy the movie as much as I wanted to. I was and am aware of its reputation and its cult appeal.
Right.
I wish I liked it more. I don't dislike it. I just wish I liked it more. And yeah, the packaging concept, that was all my producer, Jonathan Hertzberg, let's mock up some albums. And I know there were some people when they announced this thought we were announcing an album. And I think they were more disappointed that it wasn't an album release.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
and design wise, I pretty much designed it 3 times because, there's a standard template you follow with all the labels. So I did it to Fun City's usual template. And then, oh, it's a 2 disc set. It's going to have a larger booklet. Let's go crazy with it. So we went with another printer. And so I sized it to that, to the other printer specifications. And I was even sent at my parents' house because that's where I was. When you do packaging, the printer will send a white sample, which is basically the packaging but blank, just to make
Mm.
sure everything fits. And everything fit. We ended up going with yet another printer, and that's the one who manufactured what you're holding in your hand, which also
Ah.
meant I had to, rework some things again. And when you adjust the size of a booklet, even by a few millimeters, it's, oh no, this line of text is now on the next page. So how do I get it back so it looks nicer, on the previous page? And adjusting photos and uh, margins and just making sure everything looks nice. Um, the discs resemble vinyls,
Yeah.
which is
That's a nice
cool.
touch. That's a nice touch.
The back for a lot of the Paramount titles for Fun City, we've done it like an old Paramount VHS.
Oh, I like
Just
that
the way it's
idea.
stored. If you look up old Paramount VHSs on eBay, they're pretty similar in terms of the photo and text layout. Um, had to clean up a lot of images, had to colorize some stuff. Um,
Yeah, I
again,
always kind of wondered that. I don't mean to cut you off here, but when you
sure.
have older kind of archival images and they need type of restorative work, do you sometimes hesitate to change things too much on those things? Like in terms of the changing colors and stuff, trying to get the right color temp and the right
Well,
shade.
the one thing I really try to do is I went through a phase with Arrow where I think someone had complained about another release, something I didn't work on, and how the photos looked washed out, although it may have been due to the paper, the
Mm,
actual cardstock, than anything the designers did. So after that, for a little while, I went through a phase where I was bumping up the contrast and saturation a little too much. The initial Blu-ray of Mallrats I worked on for Arrow, I look at the photos and it's like, yeah, these are a little hot. So my main concern is actually that. But no, I try not to. I mean, I usually do a white balance pass if there's something that's really faded. But I'm also trying not to, still trying to retain the detail in the darks, and and yeah, and just try to clean things up the best I can. But I'd rather have an imperfect
mm.
still than one that looks too processed.
It looks too inaccurate.
Yeah.
'Cause I didn't know if yeah, because I guess I don't know. Maybe people's mindsets when it comes to restoration is to get it as close to the original as you can.
Mhm.
Like I'm assuming that that's a goal.
Well, I have
Uh,
nothing. I mean, I get the stills, but
yeah,
whether
but
they're
then
black
yeah,
and
I'm
white,
also wondering like, do you have no reference for what the original looked like?
exactly.
Oh, never mind then. When it comes to going back to like a 4K re-release of something that you worked on previously, are you allowed to go and make those adjustments like you said on Mallrats or something like that?
Well, just with Mallrats specifically, because I had worked on it the first time
Yeah.
when we did the 4K, I didn't have any of the stills. It was
Oh.
like Universal had sent over like 1,000 stills. I couldn't keep them all, but I was able to go, you know, take my existing booklet file and update that and go in and, make a few adjustments here and there. It actually, I could have made it look even better if I had the original stills and I could have done it all from scratch. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, I fixed up a couple things here and there. Usually it's nothing major at all. I'm talking about microscopic differences. And although with Black Sunday, which for Arrow, which got a UK release, the John Frankenheimer Black Sunday, in the US release, Frankenheimer's name was misspelled in the billing block. So obviously, if it comes back out again, that's something you fix.
Gotcha.
Um,
Gotcha.
yeah.
Cool. So yeah, this is ladies what's it? Ladies and Gentlemen, the Fabulous Stains,
Yeah.
and this is Fun City's actually first 4K release actually, which is probably why it's a much bigger, more involved set.
Well, that was the printer. I think I could talk about it. The printer
Oh
did
yeah,
send us the
there were
wrong
some issues
booklet.
with it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they did they was it a misprint or they did 2 cases or something?
No, well, they printed a box that was wider than it should have been.
That's what it was, 'cause
So,
this was
yeah.
pushed back a little bit, the release.
So we, came up with a second wrap, and I mean, other labels. I think Imprint does this where they'll put two full cases inside the hard box. Um, but it came out nicely in the end, and people seem to really be enjoying it. And
Yeah,
my copy's around here somewhere.
somewhere. But that is that. Any place else you would like to go next that you want to talk about? It's your show, Scott.
Oh, um, you have Excalibur there in the
I
pile.
do have Excalibur. Let me get it out of my pile here. This was another release. This is actually probably going to be one of my favorite releases of the year currently, 2026, because this was another one that was a favorite of mine for many years, and this needed this type of deluxe treatment. Um, but yeah, please talk about how you worked on this beautiful thing.
Well, that was, I mean, the artwork speaks for itself. The art is
Mm.
all original art by Bob Peak, who is one of the great poster artists and actually did my two favorite posters of all time for Richard Donner's Superman and Star Trek The Motion Picture. And, that's also kind of a case of making it look as good as it can be because I was given multiple files of that artwork and no two looked the same.
Ah,
Um,
so you had
and
to choose what was. preferable or what was the best looking?
Or if one was a little too faded and the other one was a little too bright and bold, maybe find a happy medium. The rest were okay though, and but I'm proud of my work in the booklet and using the large initials at the start of each essay because this dates back hundreds of years. The earliest books didn't have any paragraph breaks or line breaks, so you would have these large sort of drop caps to mark off different sections. And yeah, I tried to use as many of the stills as I could. When we get to the booklet, you'll see I've started to put certain
These are all
stills.
the art cards, which are double-sided, actually.
Yep.
So you've got art on one side, and then looks like behind the scenes.
Well, I think that one's the only behind the scenes still with the
Oh,
director. The
okay.
others are just the actors. But I think
And then there's shots
yeah.
of the
But
actors.
the brief called for art cards with the artwork on them, and at some point I had to ask, what are we putting on the other side?
Just
Yeah.
yeah, just leaving them plain, I guess. I guess
Yeah.
obviously not. Some gorgeous artwork, and the movie itself is such, I think, a staple of medieval fantasy. And
Mhm.
I've always been a gigantic fan of medieval fantasy from the time I was a kid all the way up till now. And this movie's been such a, I think, a beloved part of that, subgenre, if you
Yeah.
will. Now, have you been a fan of the movie?
Again, that was more of a recent discovery. I
Ah,
know it's existed and medieval, that was never really my thing. I did enjoy. I pleased to say I enjoyed it. Um, Plus, I also watched it again because there's a guide in the booklet to the characters, and I wanted to make sure I knew who the hell I was talking about, and I put the right photos next to the right names. But if you look through the booklet, you'll see at the start of the essays these large letters, and that dates back again hundreds of years
oh,
to the
yeah.
early.
It looks like a medieval
Yep, like a
book.
scroll or a
Yes,
codex. And I
with
could have
the
done more with
fancy
that if the book.
font and
Yep,
everything.
if the booklets were larger, I could have had more fun with that. But at the end of the day, the priority is readability. And if you noticed, I've started putting stills outside the text itself, into the
Mm,
margins,
yes.
mainly just for room. But when you do page layout, you always have to start with a grid. But then once you have your grid, then you can break it. So there is a method to the madness there.
Now, oh, that's a nice shot. Do the pictures change? Like, how do I want to say this? The pictures that you choose to put in like the margins or in the middle of the pages, do you pick them out specifically because of their size and how they're going to fit within the paragraphs or within the writings?
Some more often than not,
Just
I
to
know
not throw off the whole, the
well,
font size and what's on a page and what's not.
I know that there are photos where if I have a portrait sized spot, I'll try to find a portrait size photo instead of fitting a landscape photo into that, or vice versa. If the text runs over, hopefully I can make this photo a little smaller just to let that one little bit of text back in.
Mm,
It's really like I'm trying to think of a good analogy. I don't know if Tetris is the right one.
mm.
Where you're just trying to
Yeah,
uh,
that works. Building blocks. You're trying to put the
yeah,
puzzle pieces in the right place.
pretty much. I'm doing a 40. I just did a first pass of a 40-page booklet just the other day for Arrow, and that was just a case of going back and forth. You like almost when you get your vision tested, A or B, B. Okay, now B or C, C or D, and just getting a photo that works. And I don't do it all the time, but I do try to find photos that at least somewhat correspond with what's being written. So it isn't all completely random. The placement of the individual photos.
Right. So that they correspond with, there's some type of
Yeah,
theme going on or some type
but
of
this
correspondence with
booklet this booklet
what's
actually,
on the page.
given the size and all the content, this one, you know, came out very nicely and was relatively smooth process. My fear is I'm running out of photos.
Uh, because it's. Do you find that there's more stuff for you to work, more material for you to work with based off of the success of the movie, the popularity of the movie of the time, or just it just happens to be so random. Because obviously, with the movie like Excalibur, it's not as popular of as let's say the Turtles or something
Mhm.
like that. So there's more material for that. Or like you said with Mallrats, there was like 100 pictures you could work with or whatnot. Is there ever too little for you to work with?
It happens, and usually in those cases, it's screenshots, or I just make the photos larger,
Mm.
uh, to take up the space. But no, Mallrats had close to 1,000 photos,
Oh, gee. I
and
got my numbers wrong.
a quarter of them, I think, were just of Claire Forlani. Uh, but no, Excalibur had just the right amount. The Ninja Turtles, as I said, I was amazed by how few photos there were. Um, and then there are others, again, a couple of the titles that I just worked on, again, had like just the right amount, no more, no less. And I have been told a few times if I had to take some photos out, I've been reassured, they're in the still gallery on the disc, people will see them. It's okay. Because sometimes you just have that cool still. It's like, oh, this has to be in the booklet. And then for whatever
Mm.
reason, doesn't work.
Nice, nice.
Mhm.
So that is Excalibur. Like I said, this was a long time coming. It was available on DVD for a while. I think it was Snapper
Mhm.
Case DVD
Mhm.
from back in the day, which Snapper Case DVDs are the devil. They get caught on everything. And then there was a Blu-ray put out by Warner Brothers, I want to say early 2010s.
Something,
And
yeah.
and that was kind of a miracle that actually came out. I have that in my collection. I think I have it in my John Boorman section right
Mhm.
now. John Boorman, who also directed Point Blank and
Mhm.
Deliverance, and I think he is actually still with us. And I think there's an is there an interview with him on here? I
Him
believe.
and then his son joins him, I believe.
Yes, yes, yep. Director John Boorman and actor Charlie Boorman. Um, Yeah, this is a great set, great addition. Like I said, the Blu-ray had come out and it looked fine at the time. We were just happy to have it, but it's
Yeah.
nothing like this at all. This looks beautiful. This has, I believe, two cuts of the movie. It has the TV cut, which is shorter, much shorter than the theatrical cut. The theatrical cut's the one you want to go with. That's the 141-minute cut. They cut out so much for the
They
TV
would
cut
have
of the
to.
movie. Um,
Um, that's something I wish more labels did, but there always seem to be rights issues around that sort of thing.
yeah, yeah, that is interesting. Because I don't think a lot of people realize that back in the day, movies were in the theater, obviously, but after a while, they would put them on TV in syndicated cuts because they had to put
Mm.
the commercials in there. That was something they don't do now at
That was
all anymore.
something.
Not with streaming, where you can just watch the movies anytime, anywhere. There's no reason to put them on network television. Sometimes they do it for like holiday things, like you'll get certain holiday movies being put on certain channels and whatnot, but not like it was back then. Not at all. Not like this. Not like back in 1980 or the 80s,
Mhm.
essentially.
And
But
that was something we talked about on my first appearance because I think you guys were reading off, I think, Indicator's latest announcements, and they had released a bunch of war films from Universal, and one of them was, I think, Midway, which
yes,
had an extended cut for TV, and we talked about that, growing up with those cuts, and then when you watch the film on Blu-ray or 4K, and it's like, wait, is something missing? But it's from the version you grew up watching.
yeah, and sometimes like you never see those cuts again. Like they
Yeah.
don't end up on, like you were just saying, if it's a rights issue or they don't really care. You mentioned Superman the movie. There is a TV cut of Superman the
Yep.
movie, which is now available on Blu-ray, I believe. I
Yep.
think it's through Warner Archive.
Yep.
There's like several cuts of that movie. If I remember, there's theatrical, extended, and the TV cut. Pretty sure. I
Yeah.
just riffing off of that. But
Hopefully,
speaking
I'd
of
love
other,
to see the archived.
mm,
I mean, I think 2 and 3 had TV cuts. It'd be cool to
oh,
if the archive did those at some point.
that would
I
be
think.
interesting.
Yeah.
I know they just did the 4K releases for all the Christopher Reeve movies.
Mhm.
Surprised they didn't include those on there. Maybe they were just porting over the stuff from the Blu-rays. I don't know. I haven't investigated too much
Yeah.
into those releases, other than the fact that they did re-release those 4Ks in a newer edition that fixed a lot of the issues from the
Mhm.
initial release. That I do recall. That I do recall. But next title in the Scott Saslow oeuvre.
Oh boy. Let's do. I do want to talk about Inner Space briefly, but let's
Okay,
do it
sure.
now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's not out yet, so I don't have it.
I know, but no. So Inner Space, I knew they were working on it, and I lobbied to get on that one because it's my favorite Joe Dante film. It's one of my favorite Amblin films. I've been a fan since I was a kid. Um, we've got original artwork. We have a couple of posters that I'd never seen before that are in the booklet. New artwork by, I believe, just want to get this right. Doug John Miller, and packed with extras. And I had 3 pages left over in the booklet, so I make my writing debut with Arrow with that one. And I don't know if this will be a recurring thing or it's a one-time thing, but I had 3 pages in the booklet, and it's like, you know what? I'm going to write about Joe Dante's stock company of actors.
Nice.
Because he often worked with the same people, Dick Miller, Robert Picardo, etc. And I had exactly 3 pages, which was just enough room. I found some quotes. I found there's a book on the making of Body Snatchers that was on the Internet Archive that I found a good Kevin McCarthy quote. I probably could have done more with it if I had more room, but I just got it. I got it just right, and looked on IMDb. And I included. I don't think I missed anything, but like some of the actors' appearances in Joe Dante's TV show Erie, Indiana, or the episode of Police Squad that Joe Dante directed where Dick Miller shows up. Amazing stories. And because it's me, I got to get in a Star Trek reference in somewhere.
Nice.
Wendy Shaw gets started on an episode of Star Trek Voyager alongside Picardo. I got a mention of half of these actors were in Dante's HBO movie, The Second Civil War, which is sadly more timely than ever. Dick Miller gets the bulk of it. And by the way, for anyone who hasn't seen it, I highly recommend the documentary That Guy Dick Miller.
Yes, it's available on Blu-ray now, so you can watch it.
But no, it was fun to do that. I did it purely on spec. Like after my first pass, I said, if you like it, great. If not, I'll put in some more photos. So I also get in the blurb on the back, a short guide to Joe Dante's stock company. And, as I tell people, there's no deep analysis. It's just a series of nerdy lists because that seems to be what I'm good at.
Hold on. Oh, I think I got it. That Guy Dick Miller.
Oh, yep.
Yep. This is, I remember I bought it on one of the various Vinegar Syndrome sales.
Yep.
That Guy Dick Miller. Excellent documentary. I didn't realize how big of a Joe Dante fan you were. Clearly, quite an enthusiast.
I did. I saw him. He and Josh Olson did one of their podcast episodes, the movies that made me at Monster Palooza, and I was there, so I had him autograph I had him autograph a couple of discs. I had him autograph my Interspace Blu-ray and a couple others. But what's funny is Robert Picardo was at the Orlando MegaCon many years ago. He autographed my Interspace DVD. Met him at Monster Palooza, had him autograph the Blu-ray. So next time I see Robert Picardo at a convention, he's got to autograph the 4K. But this time I can say I actually worked on the thing.
Nice.
So
nice. That'll be a great conversation starter.
Yeah.
So it's interesting you mentioned the Interspace Blu-ray, which was also released by Warner Brothers back in 2015. But this release of Interspace is coming out next month in April of 2026. I think April 28th. Yeah, that seems about right.
I should have mine in a month. Hopefully a little. Yeah. Hopefully a little less. There's also
I gotta start keeping better track of these releases. But that's coming out. A lot of people were hyped when that was announced. A great, a really solid 80s sci-fi film, sci-fi comedy, I would say, because you got great comedic actors in there. I saw it years ago, and Dennis Quaid's in the movie, Martin Short's in the film, Meg Ryan, like you just mentioned, a couple of other Joe Dante regulars are in there as well. But Interspace coming soon to collections around the world, I should say.
There's also an essay on Goldsmith's score, since he and Dante collaborated many times over the years, and he's my favorite film composer. But should be a pretty fun release all around.
Awesome. Speaking of fun releases, let's move on to another one that you worked on. Where else would you like to go, Scott?
Well, I guess I have to ask, do you read Sutter Kane?
I have. I'm just holding it in my hand.
Francesco Francavilla did the artwork. And I was already into Big Trouble in Little China and had seen a few others, but most John Carpenter films I watched for the first time during COVID lockdown
Mm,
because I'm really not the biggest horror guy, and enjoyed all of them. At the time, my favorite I think was The Fog, but the one I keep going back to is this one. It's got great atmosphere, and having been to film school a million years ago, aside from so many other things, one thing they can't teach you is tone and atmosphere. How to.
true.
It's kind of hard to articulate, but you can't really teach that. And the cast is great. Talking about your great character actors, Bernie Casey and David Warner and John Glover, Peter Jason, who was in several Carpenter films. The actor who played Vigo is in this.
Yeah, Vigo
Even
the
though he's,
Carpathian. Yeah,
even though he's just playing a guy in the town, he still looks creepy. Um, and I've been a big ILM fanboy since I was a kid, and this is the first release I've worked on with effects by ILM.
nice. For those of you
Ironically,
who don't know that, is that Industrial Light and Magic? Is that
yep,
what? Yeah,
yep,
that was George Lucas's special
hmm
effects company for the longest time.
hmm
They're still around. That they're still doing work.
they're as busy as ever now. Yeah.
Yeah, because they
Um,
still. I'm pretty sure they're still part of Lucasfilm. Yeah.
mhm. But I sent a fan letter to them when I was like 11 or 12 years old. It was just before we had the I guess America Online. So I think I had my mom call information for Marin County to get the address. And they sent a form letter back. It was great, but of all the things I kept from when I was a kid, I have no clue what happened to that letter. Um, but yeah, it was cool to work on a movie with effects by ILM, and then I think like a week later, I got The Mask from Arrow to work on,
Oh,
uh,
nice.
also effects by ILM. But no, this movie, it's so much fun, and there are a couple of shots that kind of, um, I mean, I don't have any. I mean, we all have fears, and I can't say this is one, but there's a shot where they're driving to the town. She looks out the car window, and there's like nothing there, or it's just like clouds. And again, I can't say that's like a deep-seated fear of mine, but just whenever I see either weather videos or skydiving videos, just the idea of being suspended in the middle of nothing, like a void, yeah, it's rather unsettling.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, John Carpenter. We talked. Well, last night we talked about Wes Craven, and for
Mhm.
me, I always felt like Wes Craven and John Carpenter, who were contemporaries at the same time, just knew how to direct suspense. They knew how to direct horror. They like you said, they knew how to make atmosphere. They knew how to build atmosphere and how to really play with the audience members. And In the Mouth of Madness is interesting from a John Carpenter's film perspective because it's a later film from him. I think it
Mhm.
came out what
And
1995. I think it
yeah,
was
94, 95.
94, 95. I was just looking at the copyright on the back here.
Okay.
That's why I said
Oh,
95. But
whatever it says there. Yeah.
yeah. And so it's, like you mentioned The Fog. This is like 15 years after he did The Fog. Obviously, it's much longer after he did Halloween. And yeah, how I've said this on Chasing Labels a few times. It's like the best Stephen King adaptation that's not based off of a Stephen King work because it's got that feeling of this otherworldly horror stuff going on in it.
Oh
Like
yeah.
it's surreal, it's weird. There's this whole lived-in world. And if you've ever read Stephen King or even watched any of his adaptations, his world feels lived in. Like there's a history behind it. There's something about it that's unique. And he loves world building in his work. Like I talked last night about how my favorite works of his are his shorter stuff
Mhm.
because he gets to the point much quicker. But his large tomes, a good portion of them are just him world building, and so you get like that sense of the history of the world, the people that live in it, and why there's so much fear and anxiety in it. And this movie has all this fear and anxiety in it, and it builds and it builds and it builds. If I remember correctly, Sam Neill is in this. I think this is one of the films he did pretty close to right after doing Jurassic Park,
Yep.
pretty close to that. Um, yeah, and it's a unique film. Like I said, very Stephen King esque, and this release here has tons of features on it. The artwork here is just incredibly eye captivating, in terms of what is there's like a giant squid monster going on here when there's a
Well,
book
it's
down
very,
here.
I'm not an expert, but it's very Lovecraftian.
There it is.
Um, and
Um,
and on
yeah,
I listened to the new critics commentary, and they described it that even if you have never read Lovecraft, if someone describes something as Lovecraftian, you still kind of on a gut level know what that is, if that
right.
makes sense.
Ironically, H.P. Lovecraft, where he is buried, is like
Mhm.
10 minutes from my house. I
Oh
live
wow.
right near the cemetery where H.P. Lovecraft is uh, currently entombed, currently buried. Um, there's like a Lovecraft museum here, well, in Rhode Island and whatnot, because because he's a local, I guess you could say legend, if you will. But yeah, it's when you Lovecraftian is the best way to describe this movie. Even more so than what I was saying about Stephen King. But yeah, this is a pretty good one, and I know was a pretty big seller. I think this limited edition is now out of print or close to it, or at least tougher to find now.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, well worth it, especially with all the special features. And this is another one that has gotten a Blu-ray release in the past. I think it got a Scream Factory
Hmm.
Blu-ray a few years ago. That one I know a lot of people have in their collection, and I remember when that came out, people were buzzing about it. Um, and yeah, In the Mouth of Madness, which is a great title. Yeah, it came out in 2018 in that original Blu-ray from Shout Factory slash Scream Factory, and that has pretty cool cover art as well. You got Neil, Sam Neill front and center as opposed to this Cthulhu monster, but some great features on here as well. I had to pick up that to add to my John Carpenter section. That's ever growing. But yeah, that's great stuff. Anything else? Oh, I know you just mentioned The Mask, and I know you worked on The Mask. I didn't want
I
to.
I did work on The Mask. That one, again, I remember seeing that in the theater. That one pretty straightforward
Yeah,
to work on. Some of the original poster art needed some TLC quality wise, and to get it to fit the template and everything. And I think some of the title treatments I had to recreate from scratch, which I don't always have to do, but it's nice to have a scalable vectorized version. And it's one of the few movies I've worked on. It's one of the few movies I've worked on that my old roommate in LA has seen, so I bought her a copy. I ordered one for her after it was released.
nice. That's a great gift.
Something like that. I think, if I recall, I think the title I recreated. I just traced over the existing one so I could have a high res version.
Oh, nice.
Um,
I'm curious what the material you had to work with this, just because it's based on a comic book
mhm,
and it was a Jim Carrey vehicle that really
mhm,
another one that launched his career into the stratosphere back in the 90s. Um, and in similar cases to what we've been talking about with a lot of these releases, well, some of them, like Excalibur and the Turtles,
mhm,
this was one that needed a restoration and needed some type of deluxe release because, it's been available, like I said, on every format for the last
mhm.
30 years. But the Blu-ray is another one that's been that was recycled over and over again in just different packaging.
They
And
did add some extras at some point, like
yes,
some interviews and things, but this is the definitive one, I guess,
yeah,
now.
this one they added way more
Yeah.
and new stuff too. So there's a plethora of features on here. And this is another one straight from my childhood. Like I saw
Mhm.
this when it came out back in what was it, 95 as well? No, 94. Yeah,
94.
94, because that was that magic Jim Carrey year
Oh,
where he
yeah.
had The Mask, Ace Ventura, and Dumb and Dumber all in the same year. Dumb and Dumber is another one that needs, I think, some type of nice re-release from somebody somewhere.
I have
Um,
no info on that either way.
no, I know they just, what's interesting? They just did Ace Ventura,
Mhm.
and it's fine. It's fine release. But I feel like they could have done more with it. But The Mask is a big one from that time. Like I said, based on a comic book,
Mhm.
and yeah, this is now. What did you work on specifically with this? Sorry, I had to take my headphones off
Well,
when I.
this, they didn't commission new artwork for this one, so I pretty much
Oh,
did everything.
I was gonna say
Um,
this artwork does look familiar. And they've got certain lobby cards here
yep.
that look like, I guess you could say, no, behind the scenes stills.
Some, I had a mix.
Some,
Usually there's a mix of behind the scenes stills and publicity shots of, the actors. And he recently passed away.
yeah,
Uh,
your green did recently
yeah.
pass away. and then
And I forgot
Ca
Peter Re hmm?
Cameron Diaz
Yeah.
in her, like, first role ever, Peter
Yep.
Rieger.
Which I forgot he was in Peter Riegert was in the movie. Actually, I
Now
forgot
what
Amy Yazbek was in the movie too, to be honest.
Oh, yeah, she was, and I think she did an interview for this.
Yep.
She did a new interview, it was
Yep.
nice to see her. Yeah, you got an archival audio commentary with the director. I think there's new stuff with him as well. There's a lot of,
Mhm.
like, behind the scenes making of stuff here. People, like, what the original concept was behind it, what the original comic book was behind it, the way in which they shot certain scenes,
Mhm.
the big dance sequence that they had in the street, and they showed about how they shot all that. This is nice here. This booklet is uh, it's the newspaper,
Yep.
which is like featured in the movie. Big night at the Copacabana, the Coco
And those
Bongo.
those, uh yeah, those flags in the, head like, those are, like, the same flags you see in the movie. I don't even remember how I found them. I think I did a reverse Google image search, and they turned up on some archival website, and I managed to extract them.
Yeah. Now, had seen this back in the day as well?
Oh, yeah,
Uh,
I remember, I think my mom took me to see it in the theater. I would have been, 11, I think a few months shy of, 12, so
mm,
perfect age.
yeah,
Uh,
like I said, I
yeah,
was
you're
like
right.
7.
And yeah, Jim Carrey, he had those 3 films in '94 and then Batman Forever in '95.
Yes. I was actually talking about Batman Forever earlier today. Well, I was talking about, like, my brother asked me about George Clooney and, like,
Mhm,
his career trajectory, and I was like, yeah, he started out on ER back in the day, and then he pretty much transitioned from there to making movies. He made From Dusk Till Dawn. Then after that, he did Batman and Robin. And then he
mhm.
was asking me, oh, then he got Batman Forever and Batman and Robin confused, and I was like, nope, Batman Forever is the one with Val Kilmer and Jim Carrey. Um, that was another big vehicle for him. I mean, and I mentioned to him there's a much longer Joel Schumacher director's cut of that movie,
Yep,
which people want,
yep.
um, and it's out there. Whether I don't know what condition it is in, people were talking about it the other day on the internet. This is me just riffing here, and I probably shouldn't because it's not the place for it. But I'm like, people want it to be released on Blu-ray and 4K and stuff, and I'm like, I have no idea what the condition is of that. From what I understand, it's probably a work print. So there's probably so much unfinished stuff with that movie that Warner Brothers is not going to pay millions of dollars to finish it.
I know
I have that feeling.
well, there are deleted scenes on that disc, but I don't know
Mm,
how much more is missing, and, yeah, there would have to be probably new effects,
yeah.
produced. I swear I read Kevin Smith actually did a screening of it.
He did a few years ago at his theater in New Jersey at Red Bank, and I talked about it recently on Chasing Labels that they had scheduled last year, I think, or
Mhm.
yeah, last year to do screenings in LA for it, and I think Warner Brothers put the whole like stop on that, told them they couldn't do it, so they had to cancel it.
And I
And
remember
so,
because
like I said, it's out there.
yeah, I was in LA, like, I'd
Mm,
just gotten in town from whatever trip I was on, and I would have gone had it not been canceled.
yeah. So obviously, someone got a cease and desist order
Mhm.
about that. But that would be something that would be a nice release. I know they've re-released those Batman films, but Batman Forever I feel is like the maybe the diamond in the rough of those movies. That would be an interesting like big old Joel Schumacher deluxe release. But some yet again something from my childhood as well as The Mask. This is another excellent release. This movie's never looked this good, and the special features are worth it in general. Um, yeah, it's something that I'm glad they finally got to do it. And yet again, another. I don't think this was Warner Brothers. No, this was from Sony.
No,
No, from
it's
Warner
a
Brothers. I was right.
yeah, it was a new line, I think.
Yeah, they just made the. I don't know, Scott, if you did this, but you made the very very small on the back.
Which
No, just
oh,
the Warner Brothers logo is tiny, 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 as well
sometimes
as the
I'm
new
asked
line.
sometimes I'm asked to make it bigger.
Really? I didn't even know. I was just joking with you. I didn't think that that was their responsibility.
No, all of that is. Uh,
Oh, okay.
but,
You got to fit
this
it in somewhere.
I mean, I'm pretty much using the same if I get a Warner Brothers title tomorrow, I just take my files from the previous Warner release and bring them
And bring them over.
along.
I got you. I got
Uh,
you. But I
but I'm
was
also leery of making things too big
mm,
as well.
I don't know.
So
Yeah, I always wondered if there was a requirement when it came to those things when they're licensing out to
mhm.
boutique distributors, if they have to have their logo in a certain place, like front and center or of a certain size, because we want people to know this is a Warner
it
Brothers movie, you
it
know?
varies. I know actually the one logo actually hold up the back
Mm,
again. The one logo where there is a size requirement is the Ultra HD logo itself,
oh, yeah, that one
which is
right
why
next to it.
it's maybe looks slightly out of proportion compared to the other ones, but it is what it is.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it is a little larger than, let's say, the Dolby logos or
Yeah.
the DT logo or even the MPAA logo, uh, but that's fine. I mean, to be honest, I think it's more so my eyesight's not so great. That's why it was hard for me to find. But there it is, as long as it's there, and it's even on the side too.
Yep.
It's even on the side, so that's on
And
both sides.
Warner's, I think right after that release, we were given new Warner logos to work with
Yeah,
anyway.
that
Uh,
is interesting too. A little bit of a side, because
mhm,
companies do change names and do change logos, when you go back and do, like, a re-release, do you have to change the logo?
mhm.
Um, that's fascinating.
I've done it
Just
with
because
Warner
Warner Brothers is
Brothers.
once again
Yeah.
moving on to another owner.
I've done it with Paramount, I've done it with Warner Brothers, but yeah, it's no big deal, I'll just get in the email, it'll just say, "Use the new logo," and that's
There
it.
you go. There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, so let's move on from The Mask. Is there anything else here? I know you worked on Westworld, um, and
Yeah, that
that's
one's
a
pretty straightforward. I'm
yeah. I
amazed
feel
I
like it
was
was
able
just
to get
yeah.
with
I feel like
4
that was
essays
just
in it.
this.
Yeah.
There's a lot. Must have been a lot of standard material to work with that.
Yeah, but, that booklet packs a lot,
Mm.
and I think there's, like, 4 essays in that booklet, so I'm amazed I was able to get everything in with the photos and a cool little tech pattern on the top and bottom, margins.
Oh yeah, it's similarly structured to what we were talking about with Excalibur in terms of the way in which you kind of laid out the photos and the text
Well,
in there.
I also Arrow's house style, now we're getting really nerdy. Most of these labels prefer text with a justified margin, where everything
Oh,
is uniform. I prefer a ragged margin where the lines are different widths. Um,
oh,
so I figure if the
that is
text
lined up. If you look at the
well,
all
on both
lined up.
sides, it's like a block of
Oh,
text
on
that's
both
a
sides. You're
justified
right.
margin. But so I figure if I have to use justified margins, then I'll fudge the placement of the photos instead and have more fun with that.
Mhm, mhm. Kind of reminds me back in school, high school, college, where the teacher or professors would tell you, "Hey, don't mess with the margins. Like they've got to be a certain millimeter," because the kids would mess around with that, where
Mhm,
they would change the margins on the word processor, whether it was
mhm.
off Word or Pages with um, Apple and whatnot, and so just to fudge around with that. But no, the teachers had to specifically put they have to be within a
Quick
certain number margin, or they
I'm
have
not
to be a certain number margin.
I don't
Um,
think I ever did that, but a quick aside,
hmm,
I had in high school, I took a sociology class, and for the final, we were allowed to use 3 index cards front and back, so whatever
hmm,
notes you could put on your cards,
yes,
that's what you could use for the final, and my dad had just bought a scanner, like our first scanner for the family. I assume it was an HP. So I scanned every page of notes I took for the class, shrunk them down, and fit
nice.
every note page I had on 3. I mean, they were I don't know how I even was able to see them reduced at that size, so I managed to bring in every note that I had taken in that class into the final because I could fit them all on, index cards.
Little did you know you were already like doing graphic design stuff back at that young age.
Or
Yeah, I
cheating.
mean, yeah, we called. I mean, they called them cheat sheets, but
Mhm.
they were also allowed. Um, so I don't know how that's called a cheat sheet if you're allowed to do it. It's not really cheating, but I know exactly what you're talking about because it was the same thing when I was in high school, and they would let you use an index card. I remember only ever using it for a math class though, so you could put down like any type of formulas or formats that you needed to solve certain equations. It must have been in like geometry or something that they let you do that because you had to know how to.
Mhm.
what's the area of a circle, what's the area of a triangle. You need to know the formulas to put in there, and they would let you write those down and take them into a final for you or whatever. Um, but yeah, Westworld is another Warner Brothers film,
Mhm.
and this had gotten a Blu-ray release many years ago. That
Oh,
Blu-ray
yeah.
was in many a bargain bin for many a time. I remember I have it in my collection, and this is a nice upgrade. I love the yellow. Now, do you get to decide on the color of these things, or is that somebody else's
Well,
department?
the artwork itself is done by the time I'm brought on,
Ah,
but with me, it's just a matter of making everything sort of a piece
yeah.
and making sure things match. So if the predominant color is, orange, yellow, that kind of thing, that's I'm going to repurpose that throughout the rest of the package.
Mm,
So it all blends basically. So the artwork influences the colors and the fonts and everything else that
gotcha.
I use.
Now, yeah, that that makes a lot more sense. You basically come in to put all the pieces together and make it
Mhm.
all look the way it should look, or look nice, if you will.
And
Um,
not in this case, but in other cases where I'm given the artwork as Photoshop files and they're layered, I'll use some of the layers underneath for textures. When I use Tony Stella's art, I'll blow, if there's an empty part of his art, I'll blow it up and use that as a background. I'm always trying to repurpose. There's a title I'm working on now where the art has like a cool decorative element, so I've repurposed that on the discs and in the booklet, so everything, there's a continuity almost.
yeah, I totally understand. You want to keep it all in sync, and these are all details that I don't know if a lot of collectors pay attention to,
Mm,
or maybe they do. But it's all nice information to have because it really gives us a perspective of how much work actually goes into these releases. That's why when I see certain people complain about certain releases online, like how long they take to come out, or
mhm.
you know, how they look or whatnot, and I'm like, this stuff isn't done overnight. Some of these releases take several years in the making. I like on the recent episode of Chasing Labels, I talked about Guillermo del Toro's Mimic just
Mhm.
got a 4K release from Kino, and that was announced back in 2023. So, and that was when we knew about it, let alone how long they've probably been were working on it. Um, so I was like, so I wouldn't be complaining too much since so much work goes into it. But I don't know if there's any other specific titles you want to talk about or anything like that. Um,
Nothing off the top of my head. I did have fun doing it was announced. I had fun doing working on Blue Thunder.
yes, the
Chris
recent Blue Thunder.
Chris Skinner did that art. Snakes on a Plane. I
Oh
suggested
yes,
we have to do the booklet cover like an in-flight magazine, and
that's
I
fun.
came up I came up with Serpentine, which can describe both like a journey, but also kind of is relevant to that movie. And I kept telling people, watch out for the classic movie reference. And some people thought, oh, Serpentine from The In-Laws. But
Hmm.
no, on the booklet cover, uh, I used the phrase for one of the essays, Are Snakes Necessary? Which is the book that Henry Fonda reads in The Lady Eve,
Oh
uh, which
gee, yeah,
also,
because he's like a snake enthusiast in that
yep,
movie, or like a reptile enthusiast,
yep,
and he's coming back from like a safari that he was
yep.
on or something. Oh,
And
that's a deep cut reference. That's
he
nice,
says,
nice.
snakes are my life. And Barbara Stanwyck is just like, what a life. Uh, it's also the name of Brian. It's the title of Brian De Palma's crime novel that he wrote a few years ago, and he got
Nice.
it from that too. So that was my classic reference.
Nice, nice. And there are some other ones for people who probably have in their collection at home. I know I have
Hmm.
Cobra that got a nice 4K re-release that you worked on.
Hmm.
This is kind of like I guess you could call it a guilty pleasure. People hate that phrase, but whatever. It's Stallone in the 80s being a
Hmm.
badass. I mean, it's a lot of fun. The bad guy in this movie is like plays it so straight. Um, Oh, what a
Yeah.
movie! Cobra is one of my
Brian Thompson,
yes, Brian Thompson.
genre favorite, and
Always a bad guy. He's always a bad guy because he's got that look about him
oh yeah,
that gives him that. Um, yeah, and let's see. Um, and I know recently. Oh, actually, you worked on the layout for a couple of the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, the
oh yeah,
Dollars trilogy.
yep.
Did you do all of them, or was it just The Good, the Mad, the Ugly.
No,
Oh
it
no, I
was
think I'm
I
on
did
your
all
site now and I'm
3. It was,
scrolling, that's why.
no, I did all 3. Tony
Oh,
Stella did the art and titles and sort of conceived what it would look like, the spine with the, sun and, that was all Tony. But, had
yeah, I
to make
got
some.
these
Yep,
these guys have been around for like a year. These were some of the hottest sellers of last year.
but that's all,
Beautiful work with these.
yeah, that's the Tony Stella show. He makes me look good. I hope I make him look good.
Mm,
And, um, and yeah, that's all Tony's, concept. But, because there's the box, the O card, the wrap, there's a lot of
yeah,
little nips and tucks
there's
that
that
have to
side
be,
shot that you were talking
yeah,
about.
they have to be, there are a lot of nips and tucks that have to be made. And in cases
Yeah,
like this,
and
I'll,
especially with these movies that have been re-released so many times,
oh yeah.
there's got to be a reason for someone to buy these again. Because
Mm,
chances are, if you're a collector or if you're a movie enthusiast, you've owned these movies in several versions already. So there's got to be something at least eye popping to get people into it. And certainly the artwork and the overall designs of these um, is such a nice touch. And these, I think, these have to be the definitive version by
yeah,
now. I mean, I
I
don't
think
know
so.
how much more we can do. They've been released so many times.
When I started on the layout, because I was told that we'd be doing all 3, I started with The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly first because it has the longest title,
Mm,
because I didn't want to get into a situation where I did the layout a certain way for the first 2, and then you find out, oh, the third one, it's not going to work because the title is too long. And I don't know if, okay, I thought we were nerdy before. When they first started releasing the Star Wars films on DVD with the prequels, the spines had Roman numerals. So
mm,
Phantom Menace got 1, Attack of the Clones 2, but when they got to Revenge of the Sith, the font they used was too wide, so they had to use a thinner font weight for 3. So when you
yep.
line up 1, 2, and 3, 3 doesn't match the other 2, and I'm always trying to avoid, things like that.
So I've got kind of a collector's, I guess you could say collector's OCD when it comes to those
Mhm,
things, where when I see the movies lined up on my shelf, I want,
mhm,
especially a franchise like you just said, Star Wars or whatever,
mhm,
I want them to all be like uniform or at least
mhm,
like resemble each other. I'm the same way with books as well. If I'm buying books in a series, I
mhm.
need to have them all by the same publisher so that all the fonts match up, the spines match up, all that stuff. Nothing is crazier to me than when they decide to randomly switch it up. Like they will put the title like upside down as opposed to where they had
Yep.
the other titles of, or they'll change the art style, or they'll change, like you just said, the formatting of the Roman numerals, whatever the case may be. It sticks out like a sore thumb on your shelf. Now it's not a big thing, but if you're a collector, maybe that's a little collector's OCD thing that you have. So I totally understand what you're saying, and I
Well, I
do
bought,
remember.
I've read the first few so far, but I always wanted to read C.S. Forester's Horatio Hornblower novels,
Mm,
but I spent the extra money on eBay and bought a set of all of them from the same printing so they would all match and line up on
I
the shelf.
I do that a lot. I thought I was the only one who did that. So I've been wanting to read Raymond Chandler's, Philip Marlowe novels from
Mhm.
back in
Oh,
the
me
day.
too.
And I had The Big Sleep, and I had a specific edition of The Big Sleep, and I'm going back and trying to find that specific edition, and it's like editions that came out in the early 90s. So the only place I can find them is on eBay, and sometimes I'm specific about what I want on eBay because I want to see what I'm getting. And plus books
Mhm,
over time they can wear and tear, they can be torn, the spines can go, all that kind of stuff. So I'm doing like the same thing where I'm going back to find a specific edition by a specific publisher, by a book that I could buy for $10 now, but I don't want it. I want a specific edition. So I totally understand what you're getting at, because I'm the same way. But yeah, so I thought I would mention these here because these were some of the most prominent ones, and I was scrolling on your site just now, and I noticed that you had worked on these, and these are such nice additions. Um,
yeah, uh and again, that's all the Tony Stella show, and we've been continuing now with the bigger, John Woo titles, for Arrow, which
mm,
I was surprised to get them. When I got, The Killer and Hard Boiled, it's like, oh,
yes,
cool.
yeah. So yeah. Um, And I guess we could I guess we could finish up talking about this. You did work on a couple of the recent Arrow announcements. Excuse me.
God bless you.
A couple. couple of the recent Arrow announcements
Mhm.
as well. I don't know if there's too much you can say about that because there's not really out yet. But I'm talking specifically about Mortal Kombat, which has been announced, as well as one of the Golden Princess library ones you just mentioned, Hard Boiled, the Killer,
Oh yeah.
and now Bullet in the Head. Um, and I'm one of the ones who's actually buying all of the Arrow versions of those because I know
Mhm.
Shout's putting them out, uh, Imprint's putting them out, and Arrow's putting them out as well. So I'm going with the Arrow releases of those. Coincidentally, Hard Boiled, for as of this recording, just came out today, and I consider that like one of the best action movies ever. So that will be
Well,
something we'll
again,
definitely be getting.
the work on those is pretty straightforward. Although some of the photos I get to use for the art cards are so low resolution, so I have to kind of use every trick in the book to get them up to spec. But again, I'd rather have a flawed photo than one that looks too processed.
Mm,
And Tony's art, uh, can't go wrong with that. Um, the essay, it's in the booklets, it's mostly screenshots, but you try to make those look as good as they can, because for printing, images ideally should be 300 DPI, and screenshots are usually, some things I have to upres a bit or color correct. But again,
right.
it's pretty standard. I'm glad Arrow's doing these. And then Mortal Kombat, I think fans will be pleased. There's some new cool extras on them, and I had a ton of photos. So, instead of single photos on a page, I have often a lot of smaller ones, sort of collage style. And yeah, the booklet, um, yeah, I added this sort of red banner on top, because I was looking on eBay, and one of the old Mortal Kombat players guides, I guess there was one publisher
Oh yeah, it
with
does
the
say
red
that.
banner. So I wanted to, pay a little homage to that on this. And
Nice,
yeah,
nice,
fun.
like little callback to
Yep. And
video games of the past of yesteryear.
the
Which, yeah, if you were a
posters.
kid,
Mhm.
I was gonna say if you were a kid growing up in the '90s, Mortal Kombat, chances are you played the video game, whether it was at home or at the arcade. So that little strategy guide there is a little nice little like extra
Well,
thing to put on
Ninja
that.
Turtles is the one I played at the arcade all the time, actually.
Oh yeah,
Um,
yeah. I played that Turtles in Time. I think it's still one of the
mhm.
best games ever. I
The
had that.
posters, yeah.
Yeah, I had that for the Super Nintendo, and I remember because you can get like those. I don't know if you've ever seen those arcade one up like mini cabinets. You can get
Mhm.
a couple of $100s. One of them is like Turtles in Time, and I would never stop playing it if I had it. Needless to say.
I will say that one of the challenges with Mortal Kombat was just getting the original posters up to par, since they required a
Mm,
ton of color correction. The one for Mortal Kombat 2, yeah, sooner or later I may have to post a before and after. But again, it's a case of, well, what are you comparing it to? Because if you look at Google these posters, they come up different, and it looks different on this website than the DVD. The DVD looks slightly different from the VHS, which looks different
right.
from, so again,
And
you kind of just have to split the difference.
what is interesting is those posters have pretty much been so they've been used over and over again. Like
Mhm,
that's been the covers for the DVDs. It's been the covers for the Blu-rays. That was like the main theatrical poster from back when these movies came out in '95 and '97.
mhm,
I mean, these it's been reused so much. And I am curious as to like because it's the mid '90s, I don't know how much computerization was used as a storage for a lot of these files.
mhm.
Like you were saying, like low res stuff. Like back at that time, I don't know if they necessarily had high resolution storage capabilities for images. Like, because they a lot of things were still shot on, still done on film. Like I'm talking like still shots from movies
Yeah.
or screenshots from movies from behind the scenes or stuff like that. Those are probably all done on like, you know, Kodak film cameras or whatever. So I don't know how a lot of that stuff was stored. And film does fade over time. We
Mhm.
talk about film restoration, we talk about film preservation a lot, and you have to keep up with that stuff. So I'm assuming like a lot of it's similar to a lot of the photographic material that you have to work with is maybe like faded over time.
No, I mean, that does happen. I don't know, and I'm sure the studios all do it differently. I don't know the studio specific workflow. I imagine all this stuff would have been digitized at and archived at some point.
Mm,
Um, but yeah, but certain times it's often home video assets I get too, where it's the poster, but the poster sized for what the DVD was. And actually, and funny enough, I had to delete them, but the billing blocks had the old websites still
Oh, gee.
listed back when that was new, uh, so it wouldn't go anywhere. But yeah, should be fun, and I know it's a franchise that means a lot to people, and
Mm, very much.
design wise, anyway. I hope people are pleased. And the new art is by Matt Griffin, who does great artwork, and yeah.
Beautiful. Awesome. So I guess that's pretty much a good overview of all the stuff you've been
Mhm.
working on within the last year or so, I guess, and a little
Give or
tease
take.
of the future. Obviously, we'll still continue to be plugging Scott's work as it comes to light over the next however long you keep doing this. But you can check out all of his work over at scottsaslow.com. Not only his stuff with Arrow, but a lot of the other boutique labels as well as a lot of other freelance work too, and all of that kind of stuff. So check that out. Scott, thanks for joining me here for this little kind of um, how would you categorize this? A little movie chat, little work chat, little just talking about everything. I feel like we covered it all.
Geek chat. Yeah.
Yeah, very much so. So thank you all for watching. Thank you all for listening. Hey, keep on watching all the stuff we have here going on Chasing Labels. And yeah, see you all next time.
Thanks.